today we're talking about how do we estimate fractions. Well, first off, let's go ahead and talk about the different parts of a fraction. So we have a numerator, which is the top number, and then we have a denominator, which is the bottom number. So the denominator tells us the total number of parts in our fraction. So in this case, our denominator is 3, and so the total number of parts we have are 3 if we're representing our fraction visually like this. The numerator tells us the parts that we actually have. So in this case, our numerator is 1, and our denominator is 3. We have a total number of 3 parts, but the parts that we have shaded in is just 1 out of those 3. So here's another example. My numerator is 4, my denominator is 5. I have 5 total parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep. And 4 of those parts I actually have, or they're shaded in, so 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect. Now, any fraction where the numerator is the same thing as the denominator, my denominator again tells me the total number of parts, 1, 2, 3. My numerator tells me the parts that I have, 1, 2, 3 shaded in. So this fraction is equal to 1 whole. And we can see that visually here because the whole shape is shaded in. Now, how do we estimate fractions using a number line like this? Well, if we look at this number line, we see that we have the numbers 0 and 1, and then there's a lot of space in between, which this space in between is where our fractions are going to go. The first fraction we can kind of just look at right here and say, well, this line is about halfway between 0 and 1. And the fraction for half is 1 over 2. Now we can see that, we can confirm that by counting the number of sections that this number line was broken up into. So we have one section right here, and we have another section right here. And when we're at this line, we're not quite all the way here. We only have one out of those 2 sections. And there's my fraction, 1 out of 2 sections. We can do this for other fractions as well. So again, we have 0 to 1 on a number line, but now this time I've broken it up into 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. Okay, so I'm going to label them section 1, section 2, section 3, and section 4. That means I've broken this number line up into fourths. So when I'm right here at this line, I have 1 out of those 4 sections. I can write that fraction as 1/4. When I'm here, I have 2 out of those 4 sections, and 2 out of 4 is the same thing as half. So normally you'll see it written as 1/2, but 2 out of 4 is the same thing. When I'm here at this line, now I can see I have 3 out of the 4 sections, and there's my fraction for that, 3/4. All right, so that still doesn't help us to estimate fractions. Well, let's take a look at the next example. So I have this right here, this bar right here, and it's shaded in some amount, but I don't know exactly what amount. Well, I can use a fraction bar like this with my fractions labeled 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 to estimate how much this actually is, or what fraction this shape is showing us. Well, if I look here, this is where this shape is shaded in, and I can kind of line it up. It fits kind of closely with 3/4. It looks kind of close to 1/2 as well, but I'm going to say it's a little closer to 3/4. So I would estimate that this fraction would be close to 3/4. Now we use estimating of fractions in everyday life all the time. So you may see a fuel gauge in a car look something like this, empty to full, and that tells you how much gas you have. Now, just looking at where the dial is pointing, right, I might say, well, in this gauge, that dial is pointing almost exactly halfway, so I would say that this tank is about half full, and so the fraction would be 1/2. Now, we can also use fraction bars to help us compare fractions. So here I have the same length of fraction bar, right? From here to here and here to here, they're the same, but I've broken them up into different sections, into different fractions. And I've shaded in one out of these two on this first one, so this shape shows us the fraction 1/2. And here I've shaded in one out of the 3 sections, so this shape shows us 1/3. Well, using this visual, I can compare the fraction 1/2 and 1/3 to say, well, 1/2 is bigger than 1/3.